The Committee on Regulatory Reform will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Present.
Representatives Liberati.
Here.
Neely.
Here.
Scott. Young.
Here.
Grant. Here. McFall.
Here.
Snyder.
Here.
Wilson. Mueller.
Here.
Filler.
Yes.
Wenzel.
Here.
Aragona. Beerline.
Here.
Nyer.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 members. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Rep. McFall moves to adopt the minutes from the March 21st, 2023 meeting. Seeing no objections, the minutes are adopted. Today, we will be adopting substitute H1 to House Bill 4132 and reporting out the sub along with House Bills 4133 and 4201. And we'll take testimony on House Bills 4322 and 4061. With that, we will start with the changes and substitute H1 to House Bills 4132, which Rep. Snyder will be speaking to. Rep. Snyder, to your changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The substitute is very brief, and it incorporates a couple changes. One was requested by a couple committee members that specifies that the signage will be placed 1 mile before the start of a work zone where an automated speed enforcement system is installed. And the second change is was after some conversations with the MSP and MDOT, they had requested there be an exemption for an individual operating a police vehicle, fire department or fire patrol vehicle, or public or private ambulance as provided in Section 632 of the Michigan Vehicle Code. So with that, I move to adopt my substitute.
Thank you. Do any members have questions? Are these the only two or the stack? Okay.
Do we need to adopt this first? Oh, no. It can be either before or after. Well, sorry, since he made the motion, I feel like we should really do it.
We can do that.
And then we'll let him speak after.
Seeing no questions, Rep. Neely moves to adopt substitute H1 to House Bill 4132. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Yes.
Representatives Liberati.
Yep.
Neely.
Yes.
Scott.
Present. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Young.
Sorry. Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Filler.
Yes.
Wenzel.
Yes.
Aragona.
Yes.
Beerline.
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, substitute H1 is adopted.
Thank you. Representative Liberati moves to report House Bill 4132 with recommendations as substitute H1. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Yes.
Representatives Liberati.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Filler.
Yes.
Wenzel.
Yes.
Aragona.
Yes.
Beerline.
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 4132 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1.
Thank you. Rep. Grant moves to report House Bill 4133 with recommendations. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Yes.
Representatives Liberati.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Filler.
Yes.
Wenzel.
Yes.
Aragona.
Yes.
Beerline.
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 4133 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you. Representative Snyder moves to report House Bill 4201 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter.
Yes.
Representatives Liberati.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Grant.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Wenzel,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Beerline,
Yes.
Nair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 15 yeas, 0 nays, 0 passes. House Bill 4201 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we will have Representative. We have cards that wishing not to speak but support the bill. Jim, I don't want to butcher your name. Dispelder, County Roads Association, for House Bill 4132. John Lamacha from MML supports the bill. Gabrielle Desner from ACLU of Michigan opposes the bill. Derek Sova
That one's Coleman's. That one's good.
Okay. Jeff McKelvey from Michigan Paving and Materials supports the bill as well. Next, we invite Representative Coleman to give an overview on House Bill 4322, and testifying with him will be Robin Schneider with the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. Rep. Coleman.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Chair Carter, Vice Chair Liberati, Minority Vice Chair Mueller. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to take a few minutes of your time to talk about my legislation, House Bill 4322, which would amend several sections of the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act that provide for the minimum age of an individual who is performing certain actions and tasks involving marijuana. The purpose of the bill is simple. Currently, the minimum age for a person to work with cannabis is 21 years old in the state of Michigan. The bill would lower that age threshold from 21 to 19 years old. The reason we are trying to get this legislation passed, and really, no matter your thoughts about cannabis, it's important to keep in mind that 32,000 people in our state are employed in the cannabis industry. This bill isn't about young folks consuming cannabis or changing their behavior around cannabis, but what it is about is the cannabis industry and allowing these people to have an opportunity to work in an industry that's very lucrative. And Michigan universities are offering cannabis programs. In fact, Northern Michigan University was the first in the country to offer a degree in cannabis studies. The University of Michigan, Lake Superior State, and Grand Valley have also begun offering cannabis-related programs. So I've talked to owners of independent marijuana cannabis businesses, and there's still a shortage of workers right now in our state. So allowing these young folks to get in and learn the industry firsthand, and to have an opportunity to become entrepreneurs themselves in a growing industry, I think it's important to consider. And I want to actually mention that last session we passed House Bill 4232, which would allow people as young as 17 to serve alcohol. And so I know there's a little bit of a stigma around cannabis, but again, this is a growing industry, and it would give these young people a chance to maybe make it on their own and learn the industry firsthand, not consume cannabis at a younger age, but just to work in the industry. So again, I appreciate your consideration of my bill. It's House Bill 4322, and I have Robin Schneider here, President of the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Robin Schneider, Executive Director of the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. We are the state's leading cannabis trade association, representing a little over 400 business members. All of our members are either state licensed or ancillary businesses that transparently service the cannabis community. I want to take a moment and thank Representative Coleman for his work on this important piece of legislation, and I'm really just here to lend our support. As Rep. Coleman mentioned, our industry has created over 32,000 new jobs in the state of Michigan. We've created some great tax revenue, but we also are struggling, just like every other industry is, with the worker shortage, baby boomers retiring, and, post-pandemic workflow changes. And so I hear daily from our members that they are struggling to gain enough workers for their facilities. And one thing I want to point out is that when the Michigan legislature passed the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, they set the age of employment in that act at 18. And so when legalization happened, that initiative set the age at 21. And so what's been happening when a medical marijuana facility adds a recreational license to their facility, they essentially have to fire anyone who is between the ages of 18 and 21. We know this bill is set at 19, and we support that. But really looking to help fill that gap of our worker shortage as well. Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. Any questions? Representative McFall?
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell me, and I don't know if you know this or not, but what the average pay is for employees? I'm just curious because I know in my community we have several dispensaries and they are relatively good paying jobs. So I was just curious.
Certainly. I did a search on Indeed, and I do that regularly just to kind of look at what the starting pay is. And I see a lot of, $17, $18, $19, $20 an hour entry-level jobs. I know that I have 4 working teenagers, and, they don't make that much money. Well, one of them's 22, but, if he wanted to go into a cannabis industry job, I know that the facilities are very safe and secure, and I would certainly support, my youngsters in doing so. But comparatively, even the entry-level jobs pay much better than, say, a coffee shop or a fast food place would.
All right. Thank you.
Representative Filler?
Sure. This makes the change to 19. Is that correct? Hi, Robin, by the way. It's great to see you. Thanks for all your work.
Good to see you as well. Thank you.
I would be really supportive of it being 18, and I believe that was a conversation last term, but we've decided to do 19 instead of 18. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. I would be really supportive of 18, and I think it's a concept of fairness, but I'm not the bill sponsor, and so I hope to find support for it. But thanks for your work, Representative.
Any others? Yes. Rep. Young?
Guess a follow-up question to Representative. So what is the reason for the change in the age from last term to this?
Well, we believe that, there's folks in high school, young people in high school who might still be 18, and for them to be leaving school and going to a cannabis establishment, just didn't want to have any issue with that. I think 19 was an appropriate, palatable age for the legislature to take a look at. So that was the thinking behind that. Yeah.
You can tell them it was me. We had this conversation about
did,
the age. And, there's always a concern with 21, 18, the gap. But still, we have some students that, we just want to clear those lines for anybody that may have had some hesitation at supporting an opportunity for young people who study this in college to actually have an intern or hands-on experience. So I think this was, a good idea. So with that, Snyder. That was your question. Okay, I thought we had that. Thank you. So supporting the bill and wishing to speak is Micah Siegel from the Pure Brands plus Michigan Cannabis Association.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Micah Siegel. I'm General Counsel for Pure Brands, and I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 4322. Under our Pure Options brand, we employ almost 300 Michiganders in the state. We have 6 retail locations. We're preparing to open our 7th in Detroit in the coming weeks, and we employ in Lansing alone almost 200 employees. As Pure Options Chief Legal Officer, I supervise our human resources team, which is involved in all parts of the employment life cycle, from recruiting, hiring, and retention. The discrepancy between minimum employment age for adult use cannabis establishments versus medical facilities continues to be a stumbling block for my human resources team as we continue to recruit qualified associates. Many licensees, including Pure Options, as Robin mentioned, hold both medical and adult use licenses. Because of that, as a practical matter, our hiring age is 21 and up. But because we operate in 2 college towns, much of our potential labor pool is in that 19 to 20-year-old range. In effect, this denies participation in one of the fastest growing industries in our state to over 400,000 Michiganders. For young folks just joining the labor market, I can speak for our company. Our employment offer is particularly attractive. Our fully loaded hourly wage is in excess of $20 an hour to start and includes health, life, disability insurance, and a company-sponsored 401k. The process of cultivating and selling medical versus adult use cannabis is virtually identical, and the sale and providing younger workers with a chance to learn customer service and cultivation skills is good for our labor market, it's good for consumers, and it's good for the licensees. Our products and our operations are extraordinarily well regulated, and the transactions we engage in are always on camera. In the event of any kind of theft in one of our facilities, we're required by law to immediately report it to CRA and provide that camera footage. Because of this regulatory oversight, the risk of diversion from adult use cannabis to people who are under the age of 21 is minimal. We can draw a parallel to the bar and restaurant industry, who employ 18 to 20-year-olds to sell and serve alcohol. Having represented as a lawyer both bars and provisioning centers, I can definitively say the regulatory scheme built around the cannabis industry in this state is more than robust enough to discourage diversion of products. As an operator in the industry, I strongly encourage the committee to advance this bill and strengthen the cannabis industry in this state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Not wishing to speak, but as neutral, is Derek Silva from CRA. Next, we have House Bill 4061, sponsored by Representative Stone. Representative Stone, would you like to provide us with an overview of your bill?
Thank you, Chairperson Carter, for holding a hearing on House Bill 4061, the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Thank you to the Regulatory Reform Committee for the opportunity to testify on my bill. This legislation came about from a relationship I've developed over the last 2 terms in office as a member of the Warren Centerline Prevention Coalition. I was acutely aware of the impact substance use disorder has had in my community, just like many of you. My first town hall brought together several community leaders, including Care of Southeast Michigan, Families Against Narcotics, and our Drug Enforcement Agency liaison to open a dialogue around awareness, education, prevention, recovery, and community resources. I continue to partner with community members to address mental health care, recovery, and harm reduction. And despite being plugged in on all these issues, I was completely unaware of the role Kratom was playing at the intersection of substance use disorder and recovery. As elected leaders in our respective communities, our roles are so much more than writing laws. We also serve to educate and build awareness. I hope each of you take what you learned today and begin conversations in recovery communities, mental health and medical providers, parents and educators in your communities. If before today you'd never heard of Kratom, you're not alone. But once we start this conversation, do not be surprised if you're seeing and hearing about it everywhere. Kratom, or metragenine, was brought to my attention as a substance of concern by a constituent. She had asked if I had even heard of it, and at the time I had not. She mentioned her husband encouraged her to try this Kratom stuff. He had said it was a natural supplement that would give her energy since she had been feeling run down. Her concerns included not having a dosage of how much to take. There was no list of side effects or potential drug interactions. She didn't like that it made her feel jittery and anxious. And Kratom is being sold in our communities with little user guidance. I thought to myself, how are people taking Kratom yet they don't even know what they're taking? A while later, some peer recovery coaches in Macomb County came to me to share some problematic experiences some community members had shared regarding their Kratom use. One recovery coach shared an experience of starting out taking 1 capsule a day, but increasing their dosage with increased tolerance and no guideline on a dosage not to exceed. They were soon taking a bottle of Kratom a day. Another experience was someone who was hospitalized with a seizure attributed to Kratom use. These peer recovery coaches were working on grassroots activism, including educating parents, healthcare professionals, and community members. That outreach also included local legislators. They also asked us to take up legislation regulating Kratom and brought me some suggested language to start with. I began to dig in to learn more about Kratom. Kratom is not new. It's been around in the U.S. for 60 to 70 years, often attributed to have been brought back by Vietnam veterans because it's derived from leaves of trees native to Southeast Asia. Traditionally, the leaves were chewed or brewed as a pain relief. A relative recently shared their experience with Kratom, preferring to take Kratom to Tylenol. And in small doses, Kratom can create a stimulant effect, not unlike caffeine. In larger doses, it can have a depressant effect that relaxes people. But Kratom use can lead to dependence for some, and that can lead to withdrawal symptoms of muscle aches, dizziness, nausea, insomnia, and irritability. In substance use recovery communities, word of mouth has often touted Kratom as the holistic or natural approach to opioid recovery. However, in reality, many people with a propensity for addiction are frequently substituting one addiction for another. Developing an increased tolerance, yet there has been no warning of how much they should not exceed. Pregnant people that use Kratom risk giving birth to babies that experience Kratom withdrawal. And another need for Kratom regulation is the potential for it to be adulterated. Several points in the process. Many deaths attributed to Kratom have resulted from Kratom adulterated with fentanyl or even salmonella. There's a lack of consensus about how to address Kratom. Some government entities are waiting for the World Health Organization to issue an outright ban. The WHO decided not to ban it for insufficient scientific evidence. The Food and Drug Administration has attempted 4 times to have Kratom scheduled as a Schedule I drug, which the DEA has final determination, and in 2016, the DEA deemed Kratom did not meet the criterion, and therefore at no point can intercede. Many states are currently working on decriminalizing the use of marijuana, which is still considered a Scheduled I substance, but many people don't agree that that's an accurate classification. So where does kratom fit? Some states have banned kratom, such as Alabama, Arizona, Indiana, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. However, recognition that substances that are outright banned does not mean that they go away. Unless they are lethal or life-limiting, instead of being regulated, may be driven underground into black markets, fuel illicit crimes, and be ripe for being laced with potentially deadly substances. Some states have created bans and are some states that have created bans are revisiting their policies. Minnesota, Illinois, and Tennessee have imposed age restrictions. Other states have opted to restrict and regulate kratom, which made the most sense in understanding how it's being used and at times abused. Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Oregon, Colorado, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Virginia, and Utah. Similar legislation is currently being considered by the Kansas legislature. After much consideration and discussion about kratom, we've worked to develop a Kratom Consumer Protection Act that I believe will serve Michigan consumers. Restricting use to adults 21 or older, labeling potential for dependency and advisory against use by those who are pregnant, accountability for production and distribution to prevent tainted products from being sold to consumers. Michigan can empower those who choose to use kratom to make informed decisions. Individuals who have underlying tendencies to addiction can avoid substituting one addiction for another. Kratom use and need for regulation is not a partisan issue. Our office has worked across the aisle to refine legislative and language and identify regulatory language that can have an impact on kratom use. I've invited several speakers to explain the impact of kratom use in the community, the production and sale of kratom. We'll take questions once everyone has testified.
Thank you, Rep. Stone. With that, we'll have additional testimony from Mac Hadow, Senior Fellow of Public Policy in the American Kratom Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for this opportunity, and thank you to Representative Stone for sponsoring House Bill 4061. The American Kratom Association represents the more than 15 million Americans and 60,000 citizens of Michigan who regularly and safely use kratom products. Many people ask, well, who are the people and why do they use it? A National Institute on Drug Abuse study of kratom consumers done in 2022 indicate that about 75% of kratom consumers use it because it helps them feel better and it improves the quality of their lives. Much like a cup of coffee that gives you that energy boost and increased focus in the morning, kratom becomes that replacement for it for the health benefits it provides. There are about 25% of the kratom consumer population who use kratom to fight addictions. A Johns Hopkins University study showed that among those using kratom for that purpose, 87% reported a reduction in the withdrawal symptoms of the drugs that they were on, and 35% were opioid-free within a year, replacing it with kratom. Not that it's the perfect substitute because it doesn't fight pain the same way that an opioid might, but it doesn't have the side effects that are so dangerous in terms of addiction liability and potential overdose. The FDA, of course, doesn't like any of the individuals in America that self-medicate for any reason, particularly in this space, and that is why they are so opposed to kratom being available and why, as Representative Stone indicated, they tried on 4 separate occasions to have it scheduled. The truth is that many are in this space of addictions, have financial barriers to getting treatments, live in rural areas where it's unavailable to them, and many have the stigma that's associated with this that find that self-medication with a safe substance like kratom can be an effective alternative, an important alternative. And that position is articulated by the director of the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, Nora Volkow, who in congressional testimony agrees that kratom should be accessible. But obviously, as Representative Stone pointed out, it needs to be regulated. You need to make certain that kratom products sold in the state of Michigan follow good manufacturing practices, that they're not adulterated, nor are the alkaloids in the kratom plant synthesized. It should be labeled appropriately, as Representative Stone has pointed out, and should not be accessible to minors. 9 states have passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Of the 6 states that originally banned kratom at the behest of the FDA, on the premise that the DA was about to schedule kratom as a Schedule I substance on a federal level, which never happened, included Vermont. Vermont has now officially rescinded the ban on kratom as of March 1st. In Rhode Island, in a meeting with the director of the Department of Health just a week and a half ago, she agreed that it didn't meet the criteria, as does the Controlled Substances Board in Wisconsin. Indiana has in the House repealed the ban and has the Kratom Consumer Protection Act on a 53-40 vote, and it's now before the Senate. And in Arkansas, they're taking similar action. So in the Alabama, that remains the outlier that we're hoping to work with them going forward. We encourage the passage of 4061 because it protects consumers. The black market is not the place for Michigan citizens to be getting kratom. It must be regulated, and citizens should have the confidence by going into a brick and mortar store in the state of Michigan that they know that the product they're purchasing meets the regulatory standards set by the state of Michigan, and we strongly encourage it. And I'll be glad to answer any questions at the conclusion of the testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elizabeth Ann Lucas.
Hello, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a board-certified nurse practitioner who specializes in psychiatric mental health, and I am a professor of nursing at Macomb Community College. I actually lead students on mental health units, and we do ask the questions around substance use disorder. We've seen the devastation that the opioid epidemic has had on the community. And in general, I frontline with that. Now we're seeing kratom coming in, and it's a very new thing. There is no option for this on a standard drug screen. So when we get people in, they often go into opioid withdrawal from kratom, and we have no idea and no ability to plan for it because we are unable to test for it. We kind of became aware of this issue about 4 years ago when someone was starting to withdraw. And what we saw was a horrible increase in liver enzymes. Liver injury is something that we're seeing very frequent. We are also seeing some long-term kidney damage, and there is a patient with retinal damage, the nerve to the eye, that the physicians have attributed to kratom use. We have seen, I've seen students who were given the kratom pills by their neighbor, and a few more are taking that medication. It makes it very difficult for them to actually concentrate on what we're doing. And when I started asking people about kratom in September, on one particular day, we had 10 people who admitted to use. Yesterday, I actually asked patients on a unit, not of 24 people, 4 admitted using it, and 2 more were within active withdrawal with a negative screen for opiates. We're seeing a lot of things happen. And one of the worst things that I'm seeing now is actually we're seeing healthcare providers starting to use and abuse this particular substance, which is very troubling to me. However, it does mean that you are not going to come up positive on a drug screen, which occasionally we have happen, and people aren't stealing patient drugs, which is another thing. So having a revolving door in and out of places that kratom is sold, I decided I was going to take a look and see where it was sold. And on one particular day in the 28-mile drive I have between the facility and my home, there were 39 places selling this. And children were right next to the display things, and it was being sold right next to washer fluid and gasoline and chips. And I find that an important thing. I think that it does need to be regulated. It does need to be sold in places where it is not accessible to children. I think it needs to be a monitored process. So I do support this bill. I think it's very important. I also think that if we're able to have data where we're tracking things, it would be able an opportunity for us to use the data to determine whether or not things are safe. And if you are able to test for quality, you'd be able to see if it was adulterated or not. You know, I think that it costs our taxpayers and our community a whole lot when we have people with this type of damage, and we are not able to see and say exactly where this is coming from. So I am in support of this bill, and I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Lucas. And next we have Mark Kilgore.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm a person, I work with people that are seeking treatment, recovery, and recovery support services. I've been doing this work for over a decade. I myself am a person in long-term recovery, which means I have not used any drugs or alcohol since July of 1998. What I'm finding in the recovery community is that people are hearing through the grapevine that, you know, oh, this can help you get off of opiates. And they're kind of substituting one for another in a lot of instances, where they may go to taking 60, 70, 80 of these kratom pills a day. So it just becomes the addiction with that. Another thing is the not any kind of packaging warnings that can explain about what adverse reactions can happen, the potential for dependency or addiction to these products. I'm also seeing that in sober living homes, people getting out of treatment that go to a structured sober living environment, they were having issues with residents that seemed like they were under the influence of some kind of product, but when they drug tested them, nothing showed. So now some of these recovery homes are drug testing for kratom. There is a test available, and a lot of the people were testing positive for kratom. They were evicted from the home immediately because they were using a substance. So now these people that were on their way to long-term recovery were now booted out, living on the streets once again. Also, we found we have a lot of people here where I'm employed that work in the drug court systems. And the drug courts were noticing that some of the participants seemed like out of sorts, like they were under the influence of something, but when they tested them, everything came back negative. So now they're testing for kratom as well, and they're finding that people were trying to abuse kratom while they're in the drug court system so that they could get away with still, mood mind altering substance. Another thing that really concerns me is with improper labeling about, do we really know what it's mixed with? Can you use over-the-counter drugs? You could buy cold medication, for example. Is there going to be an adverse reaction if you use kratom on top of that or overuse the kratom? I have a personal friend of mine that's nephew tried kratom for the first time, and he ended up in ICU having severe seizures. Now, I know everybody's different, but I feel it needs to be regulated. It concerns me that at any age, like Liz had mentioned, anybody at any age can purchase this product. Now, other products that are sold, that we want to protect our youth, such as marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco, you have to be 21 years of age to purchase. So this can have mood and mind altering effects. Why should it be sold to people under the age of 21 as well? Now, a lot of the recovery homes now have accrued more cost to running these homes because now they have to buy specialized tests for kratom. And also with the drug court programs, they have to get specialized testing for that. The packaging also has no dosing recommendations. And I've talked to several people that have used and abused this product, And I asked, well, how much did you know? How did you know how much to take? And some of the responses I got were, I took it enough until it made me sick and I knew that was too much. To me, that's like playing Russian roulette. So I am in support of House Bill 4061. I do believe it should be regulated to help protect people that use it, explain what adverse reactions can be, and to educate parents and the community on the effects it could have on our youth. So thank you for hearing me out today, and I want to thank Representative Stone for working so hard on this legislation, and also her staff members that have been very involved. So thank you very much for giving me the time today.
Thank you all for your testimony. And I'd like to personally thank you, Rep. Stone, for having the meeting that you had on Zoom, because I'm pretty in tune with everything in the streets, but I had no idea what this was. But I'm also, with my background, I know that if you ban something or you hide something, people will find another way to get high. So it's almost like we as the government are always chasing, folks that have an addiction. So we've got to get down to root causes of what this happens. When he said when they use it for opioids, they switch. Well, when people were using heroin, they switched to methadone. So it's always one of those things. So how do we fix this? So we can't control it. So I guess the better question would be, how do we manage it? So, some opponents of the bill might think that a ban on kratom, similar to other controlled substances, would serve as better protection to our communities. Can you talk about why you've sought this approach to regulate it as opposed to a full ban?
Yeah, so we took a lot of things into account. Who's using it? How are they using it? Who has the potential to experience extreme use and abuse of it? And how to negate that. So again, we went back to keeping it out of the hands of kids, out of youth, we've seen a lot of death correlated to adulteration, so making sure that is not a contamination in what you're purchasing. And just making sure people know what they're taking. Anyone who elects to use something or to purchase something should go in fully educated and aware of what they're buying, why they're buying it, and what is their potential for problems with it.
Okay, and as you know, you and I have had this conversation. My son was working somewhere, and so, I always lean on younger people for information. And after he told me, the type of people that come in to get it, that they couldn't talk about it, that they couldn't package it, my response to him was, well, if your employer knows what it is, why don't they put it behind the glass? Or why don't they take steps to do it, as opposed to waiting for something to happen for government to do it? So I think that, first steps could be, hey, notifying, because just like me, I'm pretty square. I know a lot of people had never heard of this. And hopefully through this testimony, they'll take a deeper look at it. But we've got to figure out ways for folks to self-check. And if we ban this, we'll be chasing the tail. They'll come up with something else. So with that, Representative Snyder, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rep. Stone, for being here today and your testimony. My question kind of goes off of similar to the first bill we heard testimony on. So your bill, proposes the minimum age to purchase at 21. Are there any laws around in other states a minimum age to handle this in a retail facility to sell it? As we were talking about marijuana earlier today, or cannabis, but we have regulations around alcohol, tobacco. I'm just curious if there are any through your research in other states a minimum age for handling and working with this and selling this in a retail facility.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not encountered any regulation around that.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Rep. Stone, for your testimony. I know the gentleman spoke regarding someone being hospitalized due to seizures. Have there been any fatalities due to this drug or any long-lasting effects due to the drug?
Well, I think Liz addressed some of the medical issues, and there is, a lack of consensus. There's still research being done on what things are attributed to. I know I followed the story of a gentleman who was from Michigan, who was in recovery. He had since moved to Florida and had begun abusing kratom, and his death was attributed to a toxicity from the sheer amount he was taking. That's one anecdote, what are the data behind that? Often having kratom in your system, it was also accompanied by, fentanyl, or in the cases of the contamination by salmonella.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Stone. And with that, we have a list of cards here I'll go through. Not wishing to speak, but in support of the bill is Leah Robinson from the Michigan Chamber. Not wishing to speak, but in support is Frank Waters from the Michigan Primary Care Association. Not wishing to speak, opposes the bill, Derek Sauer of CRA. Not wishing to speak, but supports the bill is Sean Sorensen Abbott, Michigan Health and Hospital Association. Oh, that's two from them. Okay. Not wishing to speak but supports the bill is the Mylor Health Center. Not wishing to speak but in support of the bill is the Michigan Nurses Association. Not wishing to speak but supports the bill is Jane Reagan. Not wishing to speak but supports the bill is Charlene McGunn, Ph.D. Not wishing to speak but supporting the bill is Mike Tobias. Not wishing to speak but supports is Chris Sexton. Not wishing to speak but supports the bill is Michelle Hetherington. Not wishing to speak but supporting the bill is Bernie Nowakowski. Wishing to speak, I think we had Mark speak, yes. Not wishing to speak, but in support of the bill is Ryan Reblin. Not wishing to speak, but supporting the bill is Wendy Chamberlain. Not wanting to speak, but in support is Gary Eppert. Not wishing to speak, but in support of the bill is Irene Salem. Seeing no absent members and there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.